Talked about how bad of a job Kirstjen Nielsen was doing as DHS secretary yesterday morning in the segment that I did. Her ineffectiveness at the border. She announces that she's going to be resigning as DHS secretary, and of course we all rejoiced. Now, the initial intent was to try to get Chris Kobach hired as the quote-unquote immigration czar, as Trump would call it. But now the only choice is to get Chris Kobach hired as the DHS secretary. Now, story out of the Washington Times. Kirstjen Nielsen blames Congress for her decision to resign as Homeland Security Secretary. Now, of course, she's blaming Congress's ineffectiveness, of course, failure to act, no matter how many times CBP has called for their help to change a few laws, to make their jobs easier, to fund the wall, etc., etc., etc. Of course, there is a lot of truth to that. However, there was a lot of things that she could have done. There was a lot of things that she did. There was a lot of people that she hired and flooded the DHS with that, of course, were terrible. And a lot of people saw this. Even Tucker Carlson saw this. Even Lou Dobbs saw this. It wasn't just us in the alternative media. There were a few mainstream media pundits who saw this. And Chris Kobach has been throwing shots at her pretty much for the past 2 weeks. She didn't do her job properly. As a matter of fact, she flooded DHS with a bunch of people that want to do the exact opposite of securing the border. So this story here, Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen submitted her resignation to the White House Sunday as President Trump continued a house cleaning at the department amid a growing border crisis. Now, we all know the truth. She was fired. It wasn't like she just decided to resign because she was having a tough time on the job. She suggested in her resignation letter that Congress has turned her out, and she's no longer able to be a convincing advocate for Mr. Trump's agenda. Mr. Trump tossed Mr. Vitiello's name on Friday in a move that stunned Mr. Vitiello and apparently also caught Ms. Nielsen by surprise as well, which a lot of people believe that was orchestrated by Stephen Miller, which that's a guy that's definitely on our side. Mr. Trump said he wanted to go in a tougher direction in ditching Mr. Vitiello, and while he didn't say exactly why Ms. Nielsen was ousted, a source close to the situation said she, too, was not seen as up to the president's standard for handling the border surge that's bedeviling the administration. Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen will be leaving her position, and I would like to thank her for her service, Mr. Trump said on Twitter Sunday night. Now, let me just take this instant just to remind you how wrong the mainstream media got this border crisis, by the way. So now we're seeing segment after segment after segment on CNN of them talking to CBP heads, right? They're talking to the CBP heads, and the CBP heads are saying, we're having a lot of trouble down here. We're understaffed. We can't hold these people for a long time. They're flooding into the interior of the country. 900,000 people backlog. So we're paying $775 a night to house each and every one of these 12,000 or so child migrants, plus another $400 or $500 a night to house these tens of thousands of adults before they're able to see the immigration judge. Most of them aren't. They get released into the interior of the country, and 98% of them never return for their immigration hearing. The border is flooded. So we're seeing segment after segment on CNN. We're seeing headlines talk about how there's a border crisis. Now, you all remember from the video that I did about Stephen Miller, where he was arguing back and forth with Jim Acosta about the Statue of Liberty, which Stephen Miller was correct on. He basically told Jim Acosta that everyone has tricked you to believe that the Statue of Liberty has anything to do with immigration, but it doesn't have anything to do with immigration. The poem that everyone quotes was added 17 years later after the statue was erected. The statue was given to us as an award, as a commemoration of 100 years of freedom. The poem was added almost the same exact year that the U.S. passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. So this is something that Stephen Miller had to correct Jim Acosta on, and Jim Acosta, of course, got very triggered. You can look that up. It's on YouTube. It's all over the place on YouTube. Here's a clip of Lou Dobbs once again. I played clips of Lou Dobbs bashing Kirstjen Nielsen, and here's another one of him talking to Chris Kobach here.
DHS, Border Protection, basically flying a white flag in the face of tens of thousands of illegal immigrants confronting our border. This is shameless.
It's shocking. We are on track to have the highest level of border apprehensions in 12 years, higher than anything we saw under the 2 terms of the Obama administration. And the great irony here is President Trump is the strongest president we have ever had on the issue of illegal immigration. He campaigned on it. He has made clear where he stands. Yet we have his DHS apparently sitting on its hands. And so you have this strong president who wants to solve the problem, yet the agency is not doing it.
Stephen Miller appears to be in charge of all the firings and all the hirings. That, in my opinion, of course, is the most promising sign of all. You do see an overwhelming effect on wages, on security, on jobs, on all sorts of things. If you look at 32 of the 50 states, main source of immigration is coming from Mexico. 60% of those people coming from that particular country, and the main source of immigration are overwhelmingly underskilled. We're talking in the 90% range. Underskilled, low-wage worker that's going to cause a downward pressure on the wages of my neighbor. I don't want to see their life threatened. I don't want to see their wages go down. I do not want to see inflation go up. I do not want to see jobs go away. I do not want to see all sorts of things happen to them. And Stephen Miller pressuring Trump officials amid immigration shakeups, according to Politico. Daily Mail, Bloody Monday rocks Homeland Security Department. Trump fires Secret Service director and 3 more top officials quit as Stephen Miller grabs U.S. immigration reins after Kirstjen Nielsen's ouster. Now, anyone paying attention can see that Kirstjen Nielsen was doing a terrible job at the Department of Homeland Security. It wasn't just Congress's fault like she tried to blame it on. She wasn't working her butt off, as many people would say on Facebook. No, even Chris Kobach, even Lou Dobbs, even Tucker Carlson, even many different people who have been paying attention know that she was doing a terrible job. She was hiring people that were overtly anti-Trump and anti-wall. We're going to go on to the Hill. Stephen Miller pushing Trump to dismiss more senior officials at DHS and probably all throughout the Trump administration. This is what we were hoping for. If you remember, I created a video that called Trump Will Fire Everyone after the Mueller report comes out, and it appears that this is actually going to be taking place. Very, very big white pill for all of us who have been black-pilled for the past few months here. Stephen Miller wants Trump to dismiss more senior officials at DHS report. White House senior advisor Stephen Miller reportedly wants President Trump to fire at least 2 more senior Department of Homeland Security DHS officials, in addition to ongoing Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. CNN, citing Trump administration officials, reported that Miller is pushing for Director of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services Lee Cisna and the department's General Counsel John Mitnick to be dismissed. A Trump administration official added to the news network that questions have also mounted about the job security of DHS. Under Secretary of Management Claire Grady, the current acting deputy secretary, is next in line to be acting secretary under the law. But Trump announced on Sunday that Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Kevin McAleenan would become acting secretary once Nielsen leaves her top role at DHS. Now, apparently, Kirstjen Nielsen is going to be remaining for the few days while she sorts some things out, I guess, and Kevin McAleenan will become the acting secretary. Hopefully that is very temporary, because Kevin McAleenan is pretty much just as bad as Kirstjen Nielsen. If you look at some of the things that he said before about the wall, about border security, about all the rest, basically, she's turned the entire Department of Homeland Security into a mess of swampies, bushies, and PNAC people. That's essentially what she's done, maybe deliberately. Well, who knows? Miller, an advocate of hardline immigration policies, has reportedly gained increasing clout inside the Trump administration. Yes. But Trump recently told aides in the Oval Office that Miller was in charge of issues related to immigration on the border. A person familiar with the meeting told CNN. Now, I've done a video on Stephen Miller. In Stephen Miller We Trust. I believe that was the title of the video, where I talked about him, how he just shut Jim Acosta down on the whole Statue of Liberty thing, right? I talked about this yesterday and the day before, where Jim Acosta was trying to quote the Statue of Liberty poem against Stephen Miller and his stance on immigration and mass immigration into this country. Stephen Miller was like, first of all, Jim Acosta, your depiction of history is ahistorical. The poem was added 17 years after the statue was erected. The statue was given to us to commemorate 100 years of freedom, and the poem had nothing to do with immigration whatsoever, and the poem was added the same year that we passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. So the Statue of Liberty has nothing to do with immigration, and the fact that you're quoting that is ahistorical. He completely shut Jim Acosta down, and I was like, yes, not many people actually know the history of the Statue of Liberty. Everyone just accepts this mainstream, this revisionist history of the Statue of Liberty, and not many people know this, and I was very happy to see that. Trump abruptly announced on Sunday that Nielsen was leaving her post as Homeland Security Secretary. Nielsen, who took over as head of the agency in 2017, helped lead the Trump administration's sprawling efforts with regard to immigration enforcement and disaster relief, among other things. She faced intense scrutiny in 2018 from Democratic lawmakers over her role in the administration's zero-tolerance policy that led to thousands of family separations along the U.S.-Mexico border, and of course, the Democrats are not going to like who's up next. Hopefully, who's up next, which which we're calling for Chris Kobach. It could be someone other. There could be a couple of. It could be Stephen Miller himself. I mean, it could be a couple of others that we accept. Definitely not Rick Perry. That would be really bad. That would be worse than Nielsen. And certainly not Kevin McAleenan, who's in there now as acting. NBC News reported on Monday that a recent push from Trump to renew the policy led to Nielsen's ouster. Nielsen had reportedly resisted the directive, staining her relationship with the president. Trump is also removing the U.S. Secret Service Director Randolph Tex Ailes from his position, according to CNN. An administration official told the network the dismissal was part of a purge at DHS. Coinciding with Nielsen's resignation, the official said that Cisna and Mitnick would likely depart soon. Looks like Trump gave Stephen Miller permission to clean house. Once again, very good sign. We go to Ilhan Omar, and this is the reason why I say stop tweeting I stand with Ilhan, regardless of if you agree with her stance on AIPAC, which there is a lot to be said there. I've been over it. You can look at my videos that I've done about her and her statements. Omar says Stephen Miller is a white nationalist, right? She says in her tweet, Stephen Miller is a white nationalist. The fact that he still has influences on policy and political appointments is an outrage. And she's very upset that they're going to be taking a hardline stance on immigration going forward. Hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully, I'm not sure if that's real wood, it's probably not, but regardless, this is the reason why we shouldn't be standing with Ilhan. We should support her in the things that we agree with, like her stance on AIPAC and her talking about AIPAC and the control, and Steve Rosen, and saying that I can have signatures of 70 senators on a cocktail napkin. The ex-AIPAC employee who said that, if you wanted to, regardless of what's written on the cocktail napkin. We could talk about the lobbying, certainly, but I stand with Ilhan. That's just ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Have you seen the things that she said about the Covington Catholic kids? Have you seen the things that she said about the Hebrew Israelites? Have you seen what she's doing now, trying to bash Trump into caving to letting go of Stephen Miller and calling him a white nationalist? I will say it's very good, though, that Stephen Miller is actually Jewish. He's Jewish, and so, that's like a force field, which is a good thing. It's good to have some of these people on our side, certainly, because it's a good thing that him being Jewish puts up a force field against this sort of rhetoric. Because if you look at her tweet and you look at the responses in her tweet of people, going back against her calling Stephen Miller a white nationalist, basically said, here's one, he's Jewish, right? And you can't be calling a Jewish person a white nationalist. So there you go. That's certainly a good thing that he has that force field around him from being protected from being called, white nationalist or whatever. They're still going to do it, of course. The left is still going to call everyone that. I mean, this is how they're going to get you banned from Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google, everything. This is how they're going to get you banned from Airbnb and Uber, like they did with Faith Goldy. They just recently banned her from Instagram and Facebook completely, calling her a quote-unquote white nationalist. Of course, they're still going to do it, but it's good that he does have a little bit of a protection against that, and it's good that he's taking the reins and cleaning house in the Trump administration. Once again, hire Kobach. We need to see Chris Kobach hired.